Hello there, Nebula Scholar here. This here is the network test for Gundam Evolution. I managed to play it in my unfortunately limited time, but since I was playing with friends, I didn't end up recording any live commentary while playing it. I also only had time to play it once, and I probably won't be able to play it again in the time frame. So, unfortunately, I also happened to screw up the game audio. See, I wasn't exactly planning on recording anything for it, but I decided to at the last second. So in lieu of a live commentary or any game audio, this will be me talking about my experience in the network test. Yeah, instead of a nebulous adventure, you get Scholar's commentary. Also, there are various cuts here and there because, well, I set it to stream remote to hide all the player names, but when selecting a unit at the beginning of the round, everyone's names are on display anyway. Kinda defeats the purpose, doesn't it? So I had to do some thorough editing to clean that up. I hope that gets fixed later down the line, since that option is very much broken, it seems. So, if you don't know, it's a class or hero-based, team, objective-focused FPS. You get your different mobile suits as the heroes with different abilities, and there are 14 in the test. You can't have duplicate units on the same team, which I guess is for theoretical balance purposes, but it's really funny when it comes to the mass-produced units like the gyms. You can only have one per team. So, in the test, there were 3 game types so far, all vaguely similar, all amounting to zone, capture, and defense. So for one, you have to capture zones to push back the opponent, and you take turns on attack and defense. The second is basically King of the Hill. Your team has to capture a zone and keep it for time being to gather points, and the hill moves every so often. The last is another attack and defend type, where you have to plant a bomb on one of the 2 points and defend it while it detonates. Okay, so despite me playing up how similar they sound, they actually have very different flows to them as action changes from point to point. Rounds are generally quick, but the full length time of a match is pretty good. It's not too short, it's not too long. Now, there were only ranked matches during the test, which meant rage quit penalization would be in play. I didn't end up experiencing it myself, which is good, but my friend was playing a match when his internet dropped on him, so it counted as him quitting and wouldn't let him rejoin. So as penalty, he couldn't join another match until the one he left finished. And once that one finished, he was slapped with the actual penalty of being locked out of any games for a few minutes. Like, I understand wanting to discourage ranked quit-outs, but especially with this case, I feel like that's just too much of a punishment, right? But before I talk more into that, I guess, technical stuff, I just wanted to say a bit about each of the units and how their abilities work. To their credit, they all feel pretty different and unique, some to their benefit, others to their detriment. I'll start with the ones I liked and played the most. So, the tutorial starts you off with the Pale Rider, which is a versatile and comfy all-rounder, has team heals, self-buffs, and even enemy debuffs. It has the Bullpup Rifle, which is an automatic mid-range assault rifle. It's very straightforward, just point and shoot, works pretty well. Its abilities include a hand grenade, which is impact-based, and an EMP grenade, which slows down everyone in its little AoE. The impact grenade actually flies a good fit forward when you throw it, and while its AoE is disappointingly small, it's not too hard to aim. The EMP, on the other hand, is thrown underhand, and it's a really short distance. It's fairly difficult to place, and its usefulness is debatable. The Pale Rider's last ability throws down a repair pod, which heals everyone in the area, although the pod can be destroyed by enemy fire. Overall, the set of skills is, well, well-rounded, and can handle most situations. You can keep yourself alive with the pod, hit people with grenades to deal some damage and get them off you. Now, the Pale Rider's G maneuver, aka its ultimate, activates the cool Hades system, which makes you go faster. All your reloads are faster, your movement faster, you can aim down sights and still move at full speed. It also boosts the damage that the rifle does. So it's pretty basic, but still feels really good to pop and like start mowing people down. Maybe it's placebo, but I feel like I end up doing way better when I activate Hades and dash into combat. Like, it just feels really good to use. That said, Sazabi is probably my favorite unit to play. It may be because it's slightly on the overtuned side, but I certainly didn't play well enough to take advantage of that. So, the Sazabi is a close-range tank, staying alive with its higher-than-usual armor, and even has a shield, while blasting enemies down with its shotgun. Its beam shot rifle is the shotgun. It has a pretty short effective range, but it can still land hits from far off. It just won't be doing satisfactory damage. Now, when you aim down the sights, your movement slows as expected, but it also brings up the shield, which blocks damage from the front, at least until it breaks. And whether the shield breaks or not, its durability will recover over time when it's not taking damage. Sazabi can also throw its beam tomahawk. Wait, sorry. So, due to Getter Robo and Gunbuster, I'm required to pronounce it Tomahawk! Anyway, the Tomahawk can be a bit tough to land, even if the throw is fast. When it hits though, it deals a pretty good chunk of damage and even stuns the enemy for a bit, so it's satisfying to land. Whether the Tomahawk hits home or not, its placement serves a second purpose. The Sazabi has a special boost dash it can perform to cover distance, but only towards certain targets you have line of sight to. You can boost towards an ally, knocking away and stunning any enemies in your way with the shield. Alternatively, you can do the same towards your thrown Tomahawk, wherever it may currently be stuck. Unfortunately, this means that if it's stuck to an enemy, you'll just end up stopping short in front of them, instead of actually ramming them. Really, that's something that should be changed. Also, while it's nice that you don't have to pick up the Tomahawk to throw another, a nice perk would just be reducing the current cooldown time if you do happen to pick it up. The Sazabi also has the ability to highlight enemies within sight, allowing you to continue seeing them for a short while after they leave line of sight. I'm honestly not too sure how this fits with the rest of the kit, unless it's precisely for hunting down weakened enemies as they try to escape. But the Sazabi's limited range armaments can make this pretty difficult, but I guess you're supposed to rush in with your armor and shield. The Sazabi's ultimate ability are its funnels. It launches them out for a time where they flit around shooting at enemies within their range. Basically, it functions as a damage over time AoE centered on the Sazabi. The funnel's power can feel disappointing, especially in the face of other ults, but so long as Sazabi stays alive and enemies stay within their range, they can actually do a lot of damage. I've always been someone who works in close range even in shooters, so I have a lot of fun with the Sazabi's Rushdown kit. That said, its larger size makes it a much easier target. With Sazabi's high armor and ability to use a strong shield on top of that, I can see why it would rank near the higher tiers, as it can be very threatening to remove from combat. Unfortunately for me, that didn't make too much difference in changing how often I died, but that's skill user error. The Methus is frontline support. It can lay down turrets and zip from ally to ally, keeping them healed while staying in the fray. As much as I love to play more support, I love spending time in the heat of battle more, and the Methus can let me do that. Its dual-hand beam guns are surprisingly accurate and can put out decent damage downrange, but its real abilities lie in the repair cables it can send out. Methus will heal the tethered ally over time, so long as range and line of sight are kept. The wires can even remotely revive a downed ally without locking you out of movement. The Methus does have an alternate fire that looses a charged shot that explodes with a small AoE. It's not amazing, but it doesn't work. It also doesn't take any ammo, meaning it can be used as an extra shot before needing to reload. Continuing in its offensive support role, it can deploy a turret onto the ground, which will just automatically fire at nearby enemies, laying down suppressing fire or finishing off weak targets. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it will pester people and make them think twice about running in. Now, it's kinda janky, but the Methus can also assume its mobile armor form for a short while, allowing it to fly over and around obstacles. The controls are like really weird though, and it doesn't feel like it lasts long enough to even be worth it, even for short range transportation. The Methus' ultimate continues to play its support role, greatly buffing the cabled ally. The ally gains increased damage and defense for the duration of the ult. Honestly, I really enjoyed frontline support style of the Methus. Its passive heal isn't immensely strong, and its combat abilities aren't of the highest caliber, but the support it provides just being near frontline allies can definitely turn the tides. Now, I wasn't playing it, but I know I had a lot of fun being supported by a Methus when I was holding a point as Sazabi. Okay, so from this point out, I'm much less familiar with units, as I didn't play them too often in the matches, and I only briefly tested them out. Now, the original Gundam, the RX-78-2, feels like an odd unit among the cast. You'd think it would be like a generalist or even a jack-of-all-trades, but I don't know, to me it felt unfinished. Its beam rifle is very basic with decent damage and accuracy, and it can put up its shield to protect itself. But unlike the other units with shields, the Gundam doesn't lose movement speed, but you also can't fight with it. You can't fire when you have the shield up. It can also throw its Gundam hammer, which stuns enemies on impact, but has a long windup that takes getting used to in order to land. That said, the hammer will immediately break a shield on contact, so if you see someone with a shield, you can just break through them with the hammer. The RX-78-2 also has Super Napalm as its ultimate, which throws a canister that becomes the center of a highly damaging firestorm. Of course, the fire can also harm yourself, so be careful where you toss it. Unfortunately, there's no sort of guideline that can help you, place the actual... I guess it's like a super grenade, really. So, it feels like the Gundam is supposed to be a breakthrough unit, using its shield to push forward and the hammer to knock around enemies and break shields. But the way the shield works compared to Sasabi and the Gym, it feels less thought out. Gundam Exe is a melee unit, whittling down foes with beam daggers before finishing them off with a slash and dashing off to the next target. Although, despite having the GN sword stored in rifle mode, the Exe performs a range attack by throwing its beam daggers instead. I guess they were going for style, but it feels weird not using the weapon with its intended function. Also, Exe should only have 2 beam daggers, and it throws both at once. Don't know how it gets more when it literally has a gun. Anyway, Exe can attack in melee with a quick slash and a charge slash, although the cooldown timers feel very prohibitive. If you don't finish the enemy off with your slashes, you're stuck in close range with your slow-firing daggers until you can swing again. I get you're supposed to finish them off with your blades, but if you screw that up, you're not exactly going to live long enough to regret that mistake. And of course, the Exe can enter Trans Am as its ult, which speeds it up and it changes one of its slashes to a more powerful variation that can hit multiple enemies. I really wanted to learn to use the Exe because I like it and it's really cool, but I just couldn't get into the playstyle. The gun tank is frontline support, picking off weakened enemies with auto-aim and breaking up enemy attacks to quickly pick up downed allies. Its primary fire is literally aimbot. It locks onto all foes within sight and evenly deals damage across them, unless you aim down the sights to focus on a single target. And rather than reload, the gun tank manages an overheat meter. Naturally, overheating the guns results in a cooldown much longer than any reload. The gun tank can also fire its shoulder cannons for a relatively large AoE bombardment, to get enemies off of it, or just to push through some foes. The gun tank can perform a rush. This rush can be cancelled early to knock away and stun foes. It's also protected from the front when doing the rush. As an interesting quirk, the gun tank can revive downed allies twice as fast as other units. This is good on paper, but with how quickly downed units can be destroyed, it's an ability that only rarely comes into play. My favorite part is when I see an allied gun tank near me with the time to revive, and they simply don't bother reviving me despite their quicker pickup time. The gun tank's ultimate launches its core fighter to pull off a Slugger, as in, you fly into a group of enemies and self-destruct, dealing massive damage. I don't really know how you're supposed to keep piloting after blowing up your core fighter, but that's what it is. I don't know what to make of the gun tank, but it certainly has its niche in providing supporting fire. The Zaku 2 is a close-range assault unit, striking hard and fast with the machine gun and grenades, while still being able to safely disengage with smoke. The Zaku machine gun cannot be aimed down sights, but has limited bloom, making it good for spraying down foes in mid to close range. Unlike the Pale Rider's grenade, the Zaku 2's grenade is a proper delayed explosive, although it cannot be cooked before throwing. Also unlike the Pale Rider's grenade, the explosion has a concussive effect, dealing stun and knockback. The Zaku 2's most unique ability is its smoke dispenser, which obscures the unit. Except it really doesn't. The Zaku just becomes semi-transparent and is still very easy to follow due to how the UI works. Instead, Zaku actually gains complete invulnerability during the smoke's activation, allowing it to try and get out of danger. For its ultimate, the Zaku 2 dashes forward and slashes with its Heat Hawk. It's very underwhelming in terms of damage and range, although I honestly don't know what other big move a Zaku can have. It's just a Zaku after all. The Zaku 2 is very simple, but the jury is out on whether it's also reliable. Now, Barbatos is a contentious unit. I have more experience fighting it than I do using it, and I use the term fighting very loosely. Chances are, if Barbatos is on the field and no one knows where it is, it's about to instant kill you. So, Barbatos is a melee assault unit, leaping through the battlefield, crushing those who get too close. It has no ranged moves. Its basic attack swings its mace in wide arcs. For some reason, these swings also ignore shields, dealing damage directly to an enemy instead of breaking their shield. But the regular swing rarely gets used in favor of the charge slam. Charging relatively quickly and usable while boosting, the slam pancakes a hit foe, dealing heavy damage, stunning them, and leaving them vulnerable for a long time to follow-ups. The Barbatos can also use its sword to leap up and deal an AoE slam, which briefly stuns everyone in the surrounding area. The sword has the bonus effect of instantly destroying anyone who is down by the damage, preventing them from getting revived. It just so happens that the charge slam, followed by the sword slam, is enough damage to instantly destroy anyone caught by it. Basically, if a Barbatos manages to get the jump on you, they're guaranteed a kill, and if not focused on, will continue to go on a spree. Barbatos also has a special leap that allows it to cross far distances very quickly. For some reason, this covers more ground and is faster than the flight modes other units get. The leap also recharges when the Barbatos scores a kill, allowing it to quickly leap out to safety and cool down before leaping in to crush someone else. Its ultimate activates the Aliyevich nano-system to deliver 3 quick high-damaging sword slashes. Really, this is just icing on the damage cake that the Barbatos can deal out. In just my own experience, going against the Barbatos is a losing battle, unless they're at sniper distance. They can close the distance very quickly, and by catching you with a single attack, they can just win the encounter. The only major drawback would be the ability cooldowns, but even those are relatively short. I get that its major problem is supposed to be its lack of range, but it feels more like everyone else is stuck bringing guns to a hammer fight. Speaking of sniper range, the GM Sniper 2 is currently the only sniper unit in the game. It's a classic sniper, picking off enemies from afar while alerting the team of enemy positions. Unlike the Barbatos, which is annoying and feels unfair, the GM Sniper 2 is annoying to fight because it seems fair. Its sniper rifle almost is entirely useless when fired from the hip. It has some wacky bloom which causes projectiles to fire off at hilarious angles. Unfortunately, these angles mean you're not hitting anything without looking down the scope. Most enemy units can be downed by about 3 body shots, but a proper headshot will take down anything. Just as a lore complaint, there's nothing vital in the head units of these mobile suits aside from the main camera, so a headshot really shouldn't be a critical hit. Of course, for balance purposes in a shooter, headshots and criticals need to be a thing, and making the critical target being the cockpit housing torso wouldn't be a great option. So while I get it, just, lore complaint. Back to the GM Sniper 2. It has a Vulcan pod, which allows it to provide itself close-range fire, although a full salvo won't be enough to take down anything at full health. To help itself get to higher vantage points for sniping, the GM Sniper 2 can also deploy a jump pad. The way flying and hovering works in this game, though, it doesn't really feel like it provides enough height to get anywhere worthwhile. As a bonus, the GM Sniper 2 has a repair gun that can pick up a downed ally at a range, helping them get back into the fight faster. But of course, as addressed with the gun tank, this has limited usefulness as downed allies rarely stay up long enough to benefit from it. For its ultimate, the GM Sniper 2 scans the battlefield, revealing the location of all enemies to your entire team. Enemy scan is never not useful, and when it goes off, the hunt begins. As the game's current token sniper, the GM Sniper 2 fulfills that role very well. If anything, the fact that it's the only sniper makes it a very powerful unit on any battlefield. Just please stop sniping me in the face as soon as I finally get back to the scene of action. Now, compared to its newer, more advanced variant, the original GM is a surprisingly tanky grunt unit. It's defensive support, laying down traps and protecting with a shield while keeping the group topped off on armor. The GM's beam spray gun is a slow-firing pistol that deals okay but accurate damage. Like the Sazabi, it can also aim down sights and raise its shield to protect itself against attacks. It can also deliver an extremely short-range stunning shield bash. When I say short-ranged, I mean it. Most other supplemental melee attacks have a bit of a lunge or a boost to them, but the GM doesn't have that. To add to the GM's defensive options, it also has a detonator bomb that can toss out and remotely detonate, activating a heavily damaging flame AoE. The GM is also equipped with a repair grenade? You throw it and it instantly heals allies in the radius. The utility is nice, but the other healing options in the game are more appreciated, I think. Also, it's just really weird that a little bomb would heal robots. But again, that's a lore versus gameplay thing. As its ult, the GM deploys a screen of homing mines that float in place until an enemy comes near, at which point the mines converge, likely destroying the target. The GM is very much a defensive unit, equipped to lock down areas. Unfortunately, that's not really my playstyle, so the GM didn't really keep my attention. The Dom Trooper is a defensive support unit, laying down mines and buffing allies with bonus armor. Just to note, this is the Gundam Seed Dom, not the original UC variant. With classic Dom hover movement, it slides around as if it were perpetually on ice, making it hard to control. It has a rocket launcher which really feels like it needs buffing. As a rocket launcher, its AoE feels very small. Alternatively, its damage just seems too low for its rate of fire and magazine size. It really needs a buff, I think. Now, the rocket launcher's alternative fire releases a beam of continuous damage, which is pretty good. More critically, the Dom can lay down up to 3 proximity mines to lock down an area. The Dom also carries an armor gun, allowing it to bequeath bonus HP to an ally temporarily. Again, gameplay, don't know how that works in lore. The ult allows the Dom to perform a not jet stream attack, boosting forward into protected tackle, while boosting the speed and armor of nearby allies. Much like the GM, the Dom isn't quite my flavor of gameplay, so I didn't really get into it. Turn A in general feels very underwhelming. You'd assume it would be poised to be the strongest mobile suit, but that really isn't the case. I guess it's supposed to be a lone wolf, handling enemies at all ranges and self-sustaining with regen. The beam rifle it holds is slow firing and single shot, although its damage is very good. The shot can be charged up to deal more damage and pierce through, but takes 2 shots apiece. Now, despite its gun being a mid to long range weapon, the Turn A also has a grapple skill where it throws a nearby target for damage and a stun. The problem being that it tosses the enemy behind you, requiring you to spin around to finish the job if you need to. Of course, the Turn A also has its nano skin, allowing it to speed up its natural health regen for a brief time. The Turn A actually only has those skills aside from its ult. For its ult, the Turn A unsurprisingly has the Moonlight Butterfly. Surprisingly, it feels awful to use. It uses the same awkward flight controls as the transforming units, and only deals damage while you fly over enemies. It's supposed to be good over a target-rich environment, but more often than not you'll end up wasting time and dealing negligible damage, or worse, simply being shot down. The Turn A really needs to be turned around to feel like a worthwhile unit, since it only has a few abilities, and I don't think they blend together very well, if at all. Finally, the Marasai is a defensive control unit, locking down enemies and breaking formations with its wire. Its beam rifle is very accurate and can be steadied by aiming down sights. But to really finish a foe off, the Marasai can use its grapple wire to pull the target in, stunning them, before following up with a beam blade thrust. The Marasai's ult launches an AoE shock that stuns and deals continuous damage to enemies in the area. I wouldn't call it super strong, but I also wouldn't brush it off as weak. Okay, now that I've given a quick overview of the game and the units, I want to go over the bits that make this game feel iffy for me. At base, I'll say the game plays very well. It's a basic hero shooter formula and doesn't really deviate from it. The unfortunate part is that this is a Gundam game, and somehow it managed to lose out on that aspect. The game feels more like a hero shooter with a Gundam skin. Basically, it's an okay hero shooter, but a poor Gundam game. Now, this is not helped by the fact that scale is poorly established. Most maps feel designed around being traversed by the player, which makes sense. But that means it doesn't feel like you're controlling a person-shaped 10-meter mecha. It feels like you're moving a person-sized soldier bot instead. The current sound design and UI also fail on this front. There are a few classic Gundam sounds here and there, but the UI and other sounds resemble that of a different game, specifically Overwatch. Announcer and pilot voice lines are also very generic and missing a Gundam-esque flair. The fact that the original pilots of unique mobile suits aren't even an option is disappointing. The fact that there isn't even an option for a Haro announcer or pilot, even more so. These are all things that I hope will be changed and improved for the release, but honestly, I remain skeptical. But really, what makes this worse is that since the hero units are mobile suits, they don't really have their own character. This would be fine if each mobile suit had their own pilot character, but as it stands, it's just faceless generic pilots as player stand-ins. For someone not familiar with Gundam, this makes each unit harder to get to know since there's no character to associate. And for Gundam fans, it just feels like the units are missing a more core aspect from them. Now for more technical complaints. There seems to be a pretty heavy emphasis on a stun meta, where most units get a skill that lets them inflict stun. This means that during most fights, you're likely to spend your time immobile and stunned before you're finished off. The fact that stun is so plentiful and can turn the tide of a battle easily means units like the Barbatos are even more heavily valued. Despite being limited to melee, the Barbatos' mobility and ability to stun with 2 of its skills means it's a constant threat, while something like the Pale Rider's EMP grenade can just be safely ignored with no consequence. This stun death time feels even worse with how revives and respawning works. The moment that you're downed, a 10-second timer starts for you to respawn. However, you cannot move out of danger, and you maintain a standing profile while you're downed, making it very easy to execute you with little chance of being revived in safety. On top of that, the revive window is very small, provided you aren't gunned down before that timer runs out. Now, I understand that this revive window and opportunity being there warrants the respawn timer being at 10 seconds long, but that feels like such a long time where you're not expecting to get picked up. The cherry on top of the abysmal downtime between combat and death is the travel time. Some maps, especially demolition maps, have the spawn point base so far from the front lines of combat that it takes an almost additional 10 seconds to rejoin the fray, only for you to be shot down faster than the time it took to get there. Time to kill in this game is very short, and you especially feel it when recovering from death. It may even feel like you spend more time respawning than actually fighting. At the very least, if you're destroyed before you can be revived, your respawn timer should be shortened accordingly. That's how it works in literally anything else. Maybe the travel time problem would be mitigated with a map to plan routing or understanding where objectives are, but there isn't even a mini-map to assist with that. It's frustrating trying to defend objectives when you're lost in a maze with only a vague direction alluded to with these weird little, location lines. Balance for some units feel off. Some, like the Turn A, have notably fewer skills than others, and the skills they do have don't really make up for the lacking variety. And honestly, the Turn A should also just feel stronger than it is. On the other hand, as a highly mobile destructive melee unit, you'd expect Barbatos to be more like a lightly armored glass cannon type. But instead of having 800 health like the Exia, it has the more standard 1000, meaning it can take more hits than it really should be able to. Now, despite being in highly mobile suits, verticality feels bad. There's usually only 2 floors to any map, and most objects don't let you stand on them, forcing you to slide off awkwardly. That is, if you can even manage to get high enough to get on them. Maybe it's just the plethora of other games I've played, but there are so many objects I feel like I should be able to jump or climb on, more so as a giant robot, only to realize that my thruster-assisted jump height is still too low to get over it. Also, you can't even boost while hovering or in midair, which... why? Some animations are hilariously janky, although I feel like that comes with the territory. Nothing about the Turn A's grapple and throw looks right, and the fact that you can turn the camera around mid-animation, causing the third-person Turn A to spin without affecting the throw angles, it's just, well, unfinished. Which, I suppose this is a network test, but I have a feeling that's not going to get addressed anytime soon. In general, melee seems very strong in a game like this, as most units don't have an anti-melee option, or even a universal melee to get enemies off them. Plus, most melee attacks have a knockback, stagger, or even stun associated with them, which plays further into that stun meta. Ironically though, melee feels bad to use despite its effectiveness. There always seems to be a delay on the attack swing from the input, and the swings have no weight behind them. It doesn't really confer the feeling of impact, and a lot of the time you pass through or knock aside enemies without knowing if you even connected or not. Now, there's also honestly a lot of time-related issues I had while playing. G-maneuvers, the ults, felt like they took too long to charge. It was nice that their progress carried over upon respawning, but they seemed to charge so slowly that I died 2 to 3 times, if not more, before I could even get to use it once. If I was lucky, I'd get to use it twice in a round. They do seem to charge faster by dealing damage and getting kills, but that seems like a self-fulfilling system so that people who get kills keep getting them, while people who are struggling can't get access to the comeback mechanic. A lot of the alt choices also feel questionable, either their ineffectiveness or execution. For example, I feel like Hades is a good, well-rounded alt that can be effective with the right timing and skill. And again, Moonlight Butterfly, on the other hand, is just so clunky and awkward to use, and even then its damage just doesn't feel good enough, despite the fact that it's canonically the strongest ability in the game. And then there's the Gundam Super Napalm, which is hard to place and has a smaller area of effect compared to Moonlight Butterfly, but a still large area in general, but it does consistently more devastating damage. The trade-off being that it can harm yourself too if you stay too close. Like the Pale Rider's Hades, the Jim Sniper 2's ult makes sense for its class and also feels like a staple ult found in other games, as does the Guntank's Core Fighter. It's just that these abilities don't really make sense in the context of established Gundam mechanics, which again takes away from the fact that this should be a Gundam game. There are good choices among them, however. The Dom's ult buffing ally armor and speed while charging forward to enable a jet stream attack is a fantastic idea, even if it's Seed Dom and not the original UC Dom. It's great to have things like that which appeal to the fans, as they're more likely the audience than the general public. At least they should be if they decide to play their cards right. That said, as a Gundam fan, I have to say, I find the initial roster kind of odd. I mean, I suppose this is more of a nitpick, and I assume the full release will eventually get a more satisfying roster. But really, who was tempted to play by advertising Methus? Who was frothing at the mouth to play Marasai? Do people even like the Ashamar? I don't know, those aren't units I'd really say have huge appeal. I mean, personally, I'd like to see something like a Delta Plus as a Wave Rider transforming unit instead. Also, Seed is incredibly popular in Japan, so why is the Seed representative a Dom? I think people would welcome a Bukyu as a transforming unit, and a more unique rep. Also, Wing is incredibly popular in America and overseas, but there isn't a single representative from that series. I love G Gundam, and there are so many weird Gundam ideas, but nothing from there is in the game either. I want my Nether Gundam! On the other hand, Barbados and Exia make very obvious choices, no complaints about those. At least, about their inclusion. Both are representative of generational shifts in both Gundam and the age of the fanbase, so it only makes sense to include the initial lead units from 00 and IBO. I know there are so many mobile suit choices that they could go with. Believe me, I've played Gundam Breaker extensively, so I know there's a lot more out there. I just wonder what the decision-making process was, and why the Zuccarello was disqualified. That's a weird guy that you can have in here, that'd be fun, right? It's just a weird little unit. Joking aside, the potential is there, but I can also see it falling off real fast if it doesn't do much to establish itself more uniquely, especially with Gundam Battle Operation 2 also making its way on PC. To end on a more positive note, I will say that gunplay feels fine. I feel like it's hard to screw that up nowadays, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they managed. I generally had a good time playing with my friend, and we're likely to check out the full release, if not to just sate our curiosity of how things got rebalanced. As a network test, I'd say it succeeded at having excellent netcode. I believe the game had us connect to the Asia servers, but not once did I feel like a scuffed connection. It was smooth throughout all the matches I managed to play. Personally, I'm glad to see more Gundam games being more widely available. I just hope that they put in the work to make them more than just good. Also, when's the next Gundam Breaker game? I need to wash out the taste of New Gundam Breaker and Gundam Breaker Mobile. Please?